Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I can't hear Shantae, but I can hear.
Say, Shantae, you're on mute.
Hello, how is everyone?
Hello, hello.
I don't like that background. Ugh, it should be there, but I don't like it. Teresa, how are you?
I'm hanging in there. How are you? Fully funded
Oh,
you are.
I'm hanging in there, but you know what? Even if you get the money, there's so much work that goes behind it. You know, you're crazy with that. So, but I'm gonna be say I'm grateful today. Okay, I'm not complaining.
Yep. Yep.
Those crazy people you work with, boy, those are crazy people.
That's it. They're special. That's for
That's
sure.
what that's what that's what that's what we call them these days. We call them special.
Mhm.
It's nice to see you. It's been a while.
Hello, John. Can you? I'm gonna let you go now. Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. Bye bye. Now I've done that. I'm off of that line. Anyway. Hi, John.
Hello, what's going
How
on?
are ya?
Running my tuchus off. I'm going back and forth from the appeal this morning, so I there's a lot going on.
Okay. Well, better to be busy than not.
That's for sure. How are you doing, Shantae?
I'm pretty good. I'm pretty good. Um, I'm leaving to go to LA tomorrow.
I heard.
Mhm.
I'm sorry about your loss.
Yeah. It's been
That's
a
a tough
long
one.
it was a long journey. Long journey.
That's a tough one.
The only thing that keeps me with some solace is knowing that he's not in any pain anymore. Teresa, my stepfather passed away, who was also a big part of my life. Oh, he passed away yesterday.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah. But now dealing with his, I've been talking about this all morning to people. There is the life that you had with these people and the life that you had with these people. And when this happens, you're trying to merge those two worlds together, and everybody does not see things. That's the part that's making me a little bit. It's his wife who took care of him. I mean, loyal to the end, and all her family. And then my mother, who was married to him for 20 years, if not longer. I don't know, probably longer. Married to him for 24 years because my sister is 20. Yeah, they had my sister, so she was 23 when my mom passed. So yeah, so married to her, and my mom's um, passed too. And so there's that life that he had with my mom and her kids, and this one. And I'm like, need to leave me alone. All you people stop talking. John, what a sexy picture that is.
Oh, it's old. Thank you.
Oh man, look at you. That's when you were a youngster.
It's a few years ago. I don't know if I was that young, but
I'm gonna go
I
get me one. I'm gonna go get me one of those youngster pictures.
I'm covering up the gray hairs. That's
Is
what
that
I'm
what you
doing.
do?
Yeah. Do we have a script?
Who?
I'm I'm
Chris.
ch I'm churning through a few for you.
Are you really? That's so nice of you because we don't have a script. Besides,
I'm looking.
I don't do very well with scripts.
Well, there was what Heather used to do was the intro, the intro that I have to do that I wanted to make sure
Yeah.
I hit the money on that.
And I'm
Yeah.
finding quite a few different ones, so I'm trying to pick which one is going to be best for today.
And then
I'm there's also this one issue that we did not think about that the appeal used to do, and I don't know whether you're still in doing that, John. Is we used to have an ASL person that was big on Nancy's list. Yeah. But anyway, I'm not going to tell you how to do things. Teresa, do you have a PowerPoint that you already sent over to them? Okay.
I no, I didn't send it over. I didn't know I was
Are
supposed
you are you gonna? I don't know how you're gonna
to
run it. I
just
don't
um I was just gonna share my screen.
know.
Hmm.
Okay. Okay.
That works.
All right.
That will.
Are we
Okay.
recording somewhere, Andy?
Yeah, it's already recording.
Not this, is it? You're not
I
recording. You're not recording my banter, are you?
I mean, it records this, but I will splice it out later.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I found an old script that I just need to update. So let me ask the questions that I need to fill in here real quick.
Okay.
If I can find what I was looking at, where was
I
it?
don't have a script. You guys are
I'm
good.
just taking what Heather did last year and I need to just update it.
You guys are professionals.
I
So,
like,
Teresa, do you go in while they're doing that? Do you go into the office, or do you have an office?
I do have an office. It's down at Main Interior by the White House.
Okay. Ooh.
And um we were illegally forced into the office full time for a while
Okay.
there, but our
Okay.
union went through arbitration and we are now back to having telework again. So that's a big win for us.
Yeah.
Makes a huge difference.
Yeah. Who wants to be there? What city do you live in, Teresa?
DC.
Do you live in DC?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, what was my other question? Oh, as you try to get everything up and running, Andy, do we know how many registrants we have?
Last time I checked, we had around 45. I can double check again and give you an updated number.
I like hitting that 50 mark. That's my for online on a Friday.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it always, it always looks good for the numbers, for the reports.
We love the numbers.
We love the numbers.
We're at 49 right now. We're one away.
Okay. Okay.
all right.
Yes.
I'm John's father. New that I will delete new. I'm no longer new officially. The executive director is my great pleasure. This is the first talk in this year's It's More Than History, sponsored by BNHA, presented by the Peel. This is the fifth year. I'm thrilled to keep it going. Today's event, what's the title of today's event?
Henry
Uh,
Harden's Baltimore.
Baltimore's Henry. What is it,
Yeah,
Teresa? Baltimore's Henry Hart.
Henry Harden's Baltimore.
Features a presentation by, I want to get everything right here. Teresa Moyer. What's your affiliation, Teresa?
For this, I'm an independent researcher.
Okay. And I pronounced your name correctly. An independent researcher. I'll just say based in Washington, D.C. What you say for this, that means you're affiliated someplace else that's not part of this?
Yeah, I work for the National Park Service, but right now we're not using affiliations for anything other than the barest.
Got you. Okay. I used to be in DC. I was the director of the Historical Society of Washington, DC, when we restored the Carnegie Library
Ah,
with Apple. That's just a few years ago. Today's program being recorded. Please keep your mic on mute. We don't have an ASL interpreter with us, so I'll delete that line.
Um, I can have them coordinated for the other two that we're doing. Though I'll say the way that um I had learned from Kim is usually it's by request, but if it's something that we would like to have for these, I'll make sure that we
Yeah,
have them.
yeah.
Yeah.
and now that I think about it, I'm used to a Teams environment. And so, how to share my screen in Zoom, I'm not seeing how to do that.
Okay.
Andy, do you know how?
Yes, I am going to open up our participants and make sure that you have permissions because it should be as simple as you see a share button at the bottom of your screen. So I'm going to make you a co-host.
I don't need to be a co-host. I have nothing to share.
Right. I'm a co-host now,
Okay.
but I am seeing, oh, this is dumb. But I am not seeing any kind of
It
controls.
should be down at the bottom, and it'll
Mhm.
say share screen.
Mm-mm. Um,
Move your mouse just below your neck on the screen.
nope. Oh, that's fun. Um,
Are you in the inner? Are you using the app or are you using the internet?
um, I think I'm using the app. Wait, oh, okay. I think I'm back. Okay, I got it.
All right, so the run that I have is basically I do the welcome remarks, I'll do a little bit of housekeeping, and then I do the land acknowledgements, and I introduce Shantae,
Mhm.
who will introduce you, Teresa.
Okay.
I will help to moderate the questions at the end if there's any questions, and then I'll close it out. Uh, what's our next program at the Peel? That's the only thing. I'll look that up.
You look at
Angie.
the peel, and then our next lecture will be on March 6th.
Mhm.
Do you want to tell that, or you want me to?
I'll do the Peel, and then you can, or you do
No,
your next.
just keep it on one person, John. You can do it and say, our next hosted BNHA lecture is on March the 6th,
Yep.
and that will be presented by Dr. Cheryl LaRoche. You can say it in any order you want, but Dr. Cheryl LaRoche is presenting, and she will be presenting with what do we call our friend Frances Ellen Watkins Harper.
Mhm.
I'm looking forward to that one.
I love Frances. I love Frances Ellen.
And Cheryl's great too. So
But I
Dr.
love
Cheryl LaRoche on Francis Ellen Watson Parker. Did I get that?
Watkins,
Watkins.
Watkins, Watkins Harper. Is it a woman for all seasons? I think that she calls it.
Mhm.
Okay.
I hate this background. I'd hate it when it does that. Even though it does say heritage area, I should leave it. Okay. Stop being hypersensitive about what I'm seeing. I'm only there for a brief moment, so I need to stop, right?
Also, while we're here, Teresa, if you would like to share your screen now so we can make sure that it's working and you can kind of get a good feel for it, I want to make sure that we'll be good to go. And John, the next events we have at the Peel are two artist talks tomorrow, starting with Joe Giordano up on the third floor and then Larice Clark on
I see
first.
it. I see
Did you
it.
lose it again, Teresa?
is it showing in your end?
No.
No.
Okay, it's telling me that I'm gonna have to quit Zoom and come back.
Is it really?
It is. So I'll be right back.
Okay.
Okay.
That's why we have these dry runs.
Yep.
Um, John, I'm not leaving you, but I am going to turn my audio and my video off.
Okay. Joyful singing.
Signing, yes.
I see all the notes.
Yeah.
I found the run of show document. I'll forward this as like a template that we can use to fill in the blanks. And I'm going to highlight what I've changed so next time we know what we need to change. That makes sense.
Hmm.
Thanks. I'm sorry I wasn't here to help you not have to do this.
I don't know. It's okay. There we go. All right. Say, Teresa, I see your PowerPoint. I am also going to pin you um so that um we see you at the top as the presentation is happening and you don't go anywhere.
Shantae, are you still there? She stepped away. Okay. Am I all alone? I'm not looking at the screen, sorry. Anybody there?
I'm here. Maybe Shantae left. This
I
not there.
think it's
There she is.
Yeah, I
just
think Shantae stepped away, but everyone else is here.
Yeah, she's still logged in.
Yeah.
John, how long have you been with the Peel?
1 year.
Ah, a newbie.
Well, you would think, but I don't want to call myself new anymore because I did that last year when we did these. So
Yeah,
yeah, I'm knee deep at least into getting things moving forward.
yeah,
Fundraising, 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 fundraising. That's my life.
I bet.
It's a great thing that Nancy created, really. Like that and pin it. And are you with just the General National Park Service or you with a site in particular? You're on mute. Yeah,
I'm in the Washington office in the archaeology program.
got you. How long have you been in DC?
Um, well, so it's tricky. So I've worked with the National Park Service since 2000. My paycheck has come from the National Park Service since 2008.
Okay.
Depends how you count.
Okay. Hold on one second. Like, in me here. Oh,
All ready?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm here.
One thing. Quick.
I'm gonna start letting attendees in at 11:55.
Thanks, Andy.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I had to put the puppy up, so she's good.
Do you all usually have the presenters with the video on or off during the presentation?
Typically, their video is on, and we will pin you. So, the slides that you're sharing will kind of take up the screen, but you'll be the first kind of tile to appear on everyone else's screen up where all of the panelists are.
Okay.
Mhm. But do whatever makes you comfortable.
Well, I mean, it's probably more interesting to look at the slides than it is. That's what I'm thinking. So,
Yes, but we will be able to see both, if you've got your video on. So.
okay.
Bye-bye. Okay. Okay, I'm in. Thank you. I'm in. What's wrong with something? What do you want? What is that? What is that? Stop playing at me, boy. What do you want, boy? Stop playing at me, boy. You're doing too much. Boy, stop playing at me. You're doing too much. Inyana, turn your
Turn
audio
my
off.
mute.
Turn
Okay,
your
I put
audio off. No, you're not muted. We can hear everything you're saying. Smile, John. You look so serious.
Oh, I'm working on, I'm doing something on the other side, so
I know you. I know you are. I know you working. Everybody's working everywhere else. Yes, I know. Keeping busy. Keep busy. Gotta keep busy.
gotta fundraise every minute of the day. I'm fundraising, so I'm putting something together to the downtown partnership so we can get our frame shop up and running.
Woohoo.
Okay. I'm glad.
Andy, are you letting people in?
Yes. You
So we
probably
don't.
won't be able to see them on your end.
Okay, that's why I was going. I don't see anybody.
Yeah.
We only have 9 participants. I thought the rain would stop people from joining. Oh, there they go. There's 10.
Mhm. Okay. Are we ready to roll or what's?
Yeah, we were ready. John, if you want to take it away, while people are still joining, I will moderate the Q&A. So I'll answer any housekeeping things as they come up, but we will save all other questions until the Q&A at the end.
Got it. Okay, I'm gonna wait just a little bit to start.
Yeah.
To see if other people are gonna join us. And I see people coming in the room still, so we'll wait just a little bit more.
Okay.
We'll get started in about 2 minutes. Did it stop raining?
No, it's still kind of drizzling.
Spitting out, yes.
And you guys, I am not seeing the share button again. So, oh, no, never mind. Never mind.
Doing that share button.
Yeah, I don't know. We're not having a good day. We're just not having a good day. But we're back. We're back.
And I'll wait another minute. We've got a couple more people joining, so we'll get started in just a minute. Thanks everyone for your patience. Oh, there's a lot more. Say good afternoon to everyone. It's afternoon. I don't know how good it is with the rain. I'm John Swell, the Executive Director of the Peel, Baltimore's Community Museum. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the first talk in this year's It's More Than History lecture series, sponsored by the Baltimore National Heritage Area and presented by the Peel. This is the 5th year we've brought this series to people, so we're thrilled to keep it going. Today's event, Henry Harden's Baltimore, features a presentation by Teresa Moyer, who is an independent researcher based in Washington, D.C. Before we start, here are a couple housekeeping notes. Today's online program is being recorded. The discussion will be available after the program on the Peel's YouTube web channel, as well as the Baltimore National Heritage Area YouTube channel. Please keep your mics on mute until the end of the program when we ask for questions. You can add those questions to the chat at any time, and we'll try to answer them during the chat session after the presentation. You can also turn on closed captions on your Zoom toolbar. The Peel's mission is about amplifying and sharing the voices and stories that too often have been overlooked or intentionally erased from the historical record. So before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge that the Peel in Baltimore stands on traditional ancestral lands of a number of indigenous peoples, including the Piscataway and the Susquehannock. Our work is ongoing to better understand the pre-colonial history of our city and region, and also to support the indigenous peoples who are part of our communities today. You can pick up your free guide of the Illustrated Guide to East Baltimore's Historic American Indian Reservation walking tour map from the Peel, and also download the Guide to Indigenous Baltimore app for free. I'd like to thank Ryan Coons and the Maryland State's Art Council for the acknowledgement references they have made available to us, and to local leaders like Ashley Minner-Jones for ensuring that Indigenous voices are heard and recognized in Baltimore today. Now I'm happy to introduce Shawnté Daniels, Executive Director of the Baltimore National Heritage Area. Shawnté, thank you once again for allowing the Peel to present these compelling and insightful talks in the It's More Than History Lunchtime Lecture Series. Shawnté, please take it away.
Good afternoon, everyone, and I thank everyone for joining us today on this presentation. If you don't know about the Baltimore National Heritage Area, please visit us on all the social medias, Instagram, and our website, explorebaltimore.org. This website will give you an entree into what the Heritage Area does and how we connect with the communities and the cultural and heritage organizations. So this is just a small portion of what we do in the spring, is present lecture series for people to understand and get familiar with those untold stories of our landscape throughout Baltimore. I hope that you enjoy this presentation by Teresa Moyer. And like John said, if you have any questions or if you need more information, please reach out to the explorebaltimore.org and you can find us there. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Teresa, go ahead. There you go.
All right, I have to click all the buttons, right? Want to make sure you can see the presentation, see me, and hear me. I'm sure somebody will give me a shout if things go sideways. Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming today, and thank you to the Baltimore National Heritage Area and to the Peel for inviting me to speak in celebration of Black History Month. So today I'm going to talk about Henry Harden and his untold story through the places that defined his life in Baltimore. The short story is that Harden was born enslaved in 1766 in Baltimore County, became an African Methodist minister in Baltimore, and died in 1841 in Philadelphia. The longer story involves Harden as a Black person within a Black community, operating within a rapidly changing set of circumstances in Baltimore town and beyond. So for this presentation, I'm essentially taking you on a walking tour of Baltimore through Harden's eyes to show you some of the places that illustrate his life and Black life during this period. And just want to make sure that the slide did advance. Somebody let me know if it did not. Otherwise, I'm going to keep going. All right. So in 1763, Charles Carroll the barrister married Margaret Tillman, whose dowry included slaves. The Carrolls brought them from the plantation where Margaret grew up on Maryland's eastern shore to Baltimore County. Carroll owned 3 plantations in the Baltimore area. There's Carroll's Island, which is now around the corner from Benji's Drive-In. Georgia, later known as his country seat called Mount Clair, and that's now Carroll Park in Baltimore. And then there was the Caves about 14 miles to the northwest near today's Owings Mills. Carroll also enslaved people at his father, Dr. Charles Carroll's former home in Annapolis and other lands across Maryland and at the Baltimore Iron Works. In 1766, Harden was born into the communities at Mount Clair and the Caves. And the Carrolls moved people in between Mount Clair and the Caves. And it took several hours to travel between them by foot, but only a few hours by horse or by carriage. Around the time of Harden's birth in 1766, 3 things happened. 1, Robert Strawbridge established the first Methodist Society in Maryland in Frederick County. Enslaved Black people were among his first parishioners, which set an inclusive precedent for Black people to worship in Methodist meetings and established the foundation of expectations that gave rise to the African church's Black leaders. 2, an enslaved person buried a worked quartz crystal under the Mount Clair kitchen, the 1760 version that you see here. And that was the 3rd building. The kitchen was the 3rd building from the left in that 1760 graphic. It demonstrated that Black people practiced African spiritual traditions on their own and sought to protect each other through their faith. It set another expectation for Black spirituality, that some autonomy could be kept even while enslaved, and that this ethos could continue on in Black people's practices and ceremonies. 3, the Carrolls undertook fashionable renovations to Mount Clair, which resulted more or less in the Mount Clair that Harden first knew when it was completed around 1768. These changes were funded by Carroll's diverse portfolio of successful investments and ventures, all of which slavery underpinned. The new Mount Clair symbolized Carroll's significant wealth and his social and political cachet, which in turn characterized the relatively unusual circumstances in which Harden grew up. Together, these 3 events put Harden on a unique life path in which he lived through the growth of a Methodist religion welcoming to Black people, alongside the continued practice of African traditions, amid the significant wealth of his enslavers that made his growing up fundamentally different from many enslaved people in Maryland. So Methodist church history holds that John King first preached in Baltimore in 1770, while AME church history asserts that a Black man helped him find something to stand on. Methodists organized their first congregation in Baltimore in 1772. They established and constructed meeting houses on Strawberry Alley and Lovely Lane between 1773 and 1774, where Black and white Methodists worshiped side by side. Black people found Methodism's anti-slavery rhetoric and relatively welcoming atmosphere to provide hope for a more equal footing than other churches and other faiths in Baltimore allowed. When Charles Willson Peale painted this landscape of Mount Clair in the mid-1770s, he captured the look and feel of the investments that the Carrolls had made into their treasured home. But he also inadvertently preserved what 9-year-old Henry Harden saw. And it's Harden, actually, that I think makes this painting so cool to see today, because how often do we get to see a place 250 years later through a 9-year-old's eyes? Enslaved people worked predominantly around the main house and the gardens and outbuildings, where they took care of everything and served the Carrolls and their guests. Harden and other children helped care for the horses, cattle, sheep, and dogs that you can see here across the lawn. They carried out light housework and errands around the mansion, outbuildings, and gardens. And they minded smaller children while the adults worked, such as the black groom who accompanied Carol on horseback, as you can see here in the detail. The Carrolls lived at Mount Clair during the Revolution, a period when Americans fought slavery by Britain and when Black people fought slavery completely, arguing that Blacks' autonomy was the ultimate test of America's mettle. Carroll was a member of the new Maryland Assembly and its councils. He is generally credited with drafting Maryland's Declaration of Independence. And it's tempting to imagine that during his daily routines, Harden overheard the Carrolls and their associates converse about independence from Britain and reflected on its possibilities for himself. When Charles Carroll the barrister died in 1783, he enslaved at least 100 people across Maryland. His wife, Margaret, became a wealthy widow, and she chose to live at Mount Clair for the next 34 years until her own death in 1817. As part of her inheritance, Margaret assumed ownership of her dower slaves and their descendants, and some or all of the people her husband referred to as, quote, house servants. She kept them at Mount Clair as well as the caves. And by the 1790 census, Margaret enslaved 47 people over age 16 years old. And as Harden's owner, she might free him or any or all of the people that she enslaved. The Methodists outgrew the meeting house on Lovely Lane, and by May 1786, completed a new church on Light Street. Soon after, the white Methodists barred Black members from worshiping alongside them at the altar and in the pews and confined them to the gallery. In response, Black Methodists began forming independent prayer groups and established a colored Methodist society in 1786 or 1787. The enslaved and free Black population was growing significantly in Baltimore at this time due to changes in labor needs, manumissions, and migration. Foreseeing a need to help formerly enslaved people transition to freedom, an alliance formed between Baltimore's Black leaders and the Maryland Society for the Abolition of Society to rid Maryland of slavery and provide education to Black people. After Bishop Francis Asbury met with free Black Methodists to organize a church, James Carey, who was a wealthy Quaker abolitionist, philanthropist, and port merchant in Baltimore, entrusted a lot on Sharp Street at Pratt to the Maryland Abolition Society in the early 1790s for an African school and church. According to James Handy, who was a AME minister and historian, Henry Harden led the Black Methodists at this time, even though he was still enslaved. Harden officially joined the Methodist Episcopal Church on January 31st, 1802, with Millie Harden, who Tillman Carroll also enslaved, and his wife, Frances. They attended class together on Sundays at the African church. And so here you can see an engraving of that first African church. And down at the bottom of this record, this church record, you can see the Hardens records from when they joined the church on trial. I'll also call your attention to the name just above, Susanna Williams. She will come into the story in a little bit. A few months later in 1802, a few months after the Hardens joined the Sharp Street Church officially, Carey assigned the property to a group of free Black men who became the church's first trustees. Most of them held properties themselves. They worked craft or building jobs and were in the process of freeing their family members and friends. Sometime between 1808, when Daniel Coker was ordained in New York, and October 1809, when he announced his opening of the African school in the African church in Baltimore, so here, Coker arrived in Baltimore and became free. Coker took charge of the Black Methodists, providing the vision, gumption, and community organizing talents that Black Baltimoreans needed to seek a more autonomous Methodist church for themselves, and he helped the Black community coordinate a strategy to do so. Coker's leadership would significantly shape the Hardens' lives. These maps plot out Harden's places at this time. And I hope you can see this. They're marked by blue dots, then the arrows point to blue dots on the Google map. And so the points are the points of reference for you to see. So Frances Harden was a free woman by March 1810. And her first property sat at near the northeast corner of Hill Street and Sharp Street in the area of today's Otterbein or Sharp Leyden Hill neighborhoods, a few blocks south of the African church at Sharp and Pratt. On the southwest corner of that intersection where her lot sat, the Berry brothers operated a brick-making factory for specialized bricks, but otherwise there was only a sprinkling of modest houses and businesses held by laborers, craftspeople, grocers, accountants, and others. A number of free Black people lived among the white people in this area. It took about 45 minutes to walk from Frances's property or the Sharp Street Church to Mount Clair, where Henry was still enslaved. And so Harden, who was not yet free, was helping Coker to attend to the Black community in Baltimore, because even though Black Methodists paid the white preachers to conduct services for them, like funerals or visiting the sick, the white preachers refused to perform the services that they had been paid to do. In 1810, Harden formed a class about 3 miles from Baltimore on the Frederick Road, among several mills clustered on Gwynns Falls. He preached there twice per month. One of the mills, Millington Mill, sat on Mount Clair land, and it took about 30 minutes for him to walk from Mount Clair to this preaching site. In May 1812, a friend of the Hardens named Stephen Hill assigned Frances property on Baltimore Street at Pine and an adjacent parcel in January 1813. During this time, Frances took out mortgages to have buildings built, but I'm not sure where she actually lived. She assigned the Hill Street property and sold the improvements in April 1813 to a man named Allen B. Williams, who was a Black builder. In December 1813, Frances Harden sold her lots on Baltimore Street and purchased a freestanding 2-story brick house on Pearl Street. The house was about 1.5 miles or 40-minute walk from Mount Clair, and perhaps Henry Harden lived with his wife at this home. A 1799 city ordinance required buildings to be built in brick to reduce the chance of fire. And I haven't found any examples of freestanding 2-story brick buildings from this period in Baltimore, but it was likely 2 rooms deep with a living area and a kitchen downstairs and bedrooms upstairs. Pearl Street and the area around it was mostly undeveloped, and it sat then on the western outskirts of town. In November 1814, the Hardens hosted a group in their home to discuss forming an independent African Methodist church. Joining Coker and the Hardens were their friend Stephen Hill, Jacob Gilliard, George Douglas, Don Carlos Hall, and Daniel Brister. So together, in the house of a free woman and an enslaved Methodist minister, they planned a new African church in Baltimore. In early spring 1815, the Hardens and approximately 165 parishioners separated from the African church on Sharp Street and formed the African Methodist Bethel Church Society. Coker rented space from the Presbyterian Church in Old Town for a short period of time before arranging with William Carman to use the former German Lutheran Church on Fish Street. Carman purchased the property in 1812 after the Lutherans relocated to their new church around the corner on Gay Street in 1808. Built in 1773, the brick church measured 64 feet wide and 38 feet deep. It had 3 stories in front and 2 in the rear, and it had the inside was, quote, furnished in a convenient manner with the pulpit, pews, and galleries having large boards, end quote. But the street was called Fish Street for a reason. When the nearby Jones Falls overflowed, the floodwaters pushed fish into the street and into the buildings nearby. Coker, Harden, and Richard Williams served as Bethel's first preachers, but at a cost. The Methodist Church expelled Coker on April 14th and Harden and Williams on April 17th, likely for sowing dissension. The church trustees were expelled after that. Nonetheless, on April 23rd or June 3rd, 1815, the African Bethel Church was established officially on Fish Street. And so from the Hardens' home to Bethel AME Church on Fish Street, the walk took about 25 minutes. Harden likely approached Margaret Tillman Carroll at about this time to request his freedom, and she agreed, officially recording his manumission on August 19, 1815, to take effect at a later date. And things were moving now for the idea of an autonomous African Methodist church. In January 1816, Pennsylvania's Supreme Court confirmed the independence of Richard Allen's Bethel African Methodist Episcopal Church in Philadelphia from St. George's Methodist Church. This was huge because it enabled Allen's church to act autonomously from the white church and make its own decisions without white Methodist oversight. Richard Allen, Daniel Coker, and others formed a Christian confederation and agreed to hold a convention in Philadelphia in the spring. In the meantime, Coker and the Bethel church leaders in Baltimore prepared paperwork to incorporate their own church. They adopted a constitution on April 17, 1816, and on April 8, they recorded it at the courthouse, which you can see in the upper right here. This courthouse was built in 1809 on the southwest corner of Calvert and Lexington Streets. And it was also at this courthouse where, on April 8, Harden received his certificate of freedom because this courthouse was where manumission records were managed. Harden's certificate of freedom described him as a light-skinned man about 5'9" tall. Now free, Harden could assume an official church role and use his papers to leave the state. You can see his manumission record here. Harden, Coker, and 3 other men represented Baltimore at the first convention of the African Church at Richard Allen's Bethel Church in Philadelphia from April 11 to 27, 1816. The delegates from Baltimore and 4 other cities first officially established the AME Church, then upon completing administrative business, elected Allen to be their first bishop. So thus, just days after gaining his own freedom, Harden took part in the first AME conference, helping to establish the denomination's first independent church and witnessing the election and ordination of its first bishop. By early fall of 1816, however, Frances Harden knew she was dying, and she passed at age 45 in late November. Her possessions at Pearl Street, including portraits in gilded frames, a clock, carpeting, and enough Windsor chairs and tableware to host a dozen people in meetings, suggested both her modest means and social status and activities as a minister's wife. Following her death, Harden and Frances's 2 sons likely received visitors at the Pearl Street home, then placed her body on a wagon to be carried in a funeral procession of loved ones and friends to the burying ground. Black people at this time typically were interred in the public burying grounds at the Potter's Fields or in the streets, but the community had no control over these spaces, which meant that burials were often disturbed. Bethel Church did not have its own cemetery at this time, but back in June 1807, Black trustees of the Sharp Street Church, including some of the men who were now Bethel's church trustees, had acquired land for a burying ground. So on this map, it was labeled African, and Frances was likely buried here. Today, the site is an industrial center and has its parking lots. It's located just west of the stadium. And I prefer to think that Frances's remains are not there anymore, but that they were moved and reinterred with others to the Bel Air Cemetery, which opened in the mid-19th century, northwest of the Bel Air Market in Old Town. So these portraits are of Richard Allen to the left and Daniel Coker to the right. Allen and Harden were about the same age, but Coker was significantly younger. And even though we don't have any images of Harden himself, these portraits suggest how he may have styled his hair and his sideburns and his clothes. Harden's prominence increased after the Baltimore Conference of 1818, where the members elected him the book steward and Allen ordained him to elders' orders. Allen also appointed Harden to replace Coker as the elder in charge at Bethel, making him the de facto leader of Baltimore's Black community. Appointment to these important roles demonstrated the trust of Allen and the Black Methodist community in Harden. As book steward, Harden was responsible for selling and distributing the doctrines and discipline of the African Methodist Episcopal Church, which was first published in 1817. It outlined the church's beliefs, rules, roles, and administrative responsibilities, and it provided scripts, if a preacher could read, for services such as marriages and funerals. This appointment suggested that Harden could read, which is further supported by letters being left for him at post offices, but I have found no evidence that he could write. Harden must have been an effective speaker and organizer because Allen sent him to New York City in the fall of 1819 to establish an AME conference there. At the time, there were two other African Methodist churches in Lower Manhattan, but they operated under the auspices of the White Methodist Church. They resented Allen setting up a new church to compete with theirs, particularly because he refused to ordain their ministers unless they joined his church. Harden worked from a schoolroom turned church at the rear of a lot on Mott Street. It was consecrated Bethel on July 23rd, 1820, although city directories called it the African Bethlehem Church. Harden's church had about 20 members, and they were mostly women. And I don't know where the building was on Mott. And I'm totally putting this forward on very thin comparative evidence, even though I think I'm right. But I wonder if the church was all women because it was an overflow space for the women's sewing class at the African school nearby on Mulberry Street. Harden grew the congregation weekly, even drawing people from established African Methodist congregations seeking freedom from white Methodist oversight, including members from Brooklyn's Sand Street Church in August 1820 and Flushing's Macedonia Church, where he served as pastor from 1821 to 1823. Harden also recruited several men who became key figures in the AME Church, who, in exchange for joining Allen's conference, Allen ordained to deacon or elders' orders. In late summer 1821, Harden presided over the General African Methodist Bethel Church camp meeting near Flushing, where between 4,000 and 5,000 people attended. In the spring of 1822, while still in charge at Mott Street, Harden returned to Baltimore for an annual conference, and during that visit, three important things happened. First, he had just been named and shamed in newspaper advertisements over a debt owed from Frances Harden's estate for construction she had contracted, because after a court case, the debt was being called in. And this came at a terrible time because, second, Harden was one of three men nominated to be Bishop Allen's co-bishop by the Baltimore Conference, and this demonstrated his standing in the AME Church. And third, Bishop Allen married Harden to the widow Susan Williams, who we saw earlier in 1802, to whose husband, Allen B. Williams, and stay with me here, Frances Harden assigned her Hill Street property to in 1813. So Susan now owned Hill Street, which Frances Harden had owned. And her late husband's estate inventory suggested that she was literate and she had some means. And this made for a proper wife and partner to an AME minister on the rise. Susan's property enabled the Hardens to take out loans to supplement Harden's minister's salary. After the Baltimore and Philadelphia conferences voted on the co-bishop position, however, Harden came in third and he was passed over for the role. Undoubtedly disappointed, or possibly relieved, he and Susan returned to New York, where they lived at 22 Cortlandt Street, likely in a boarding house, but the location of the site is now lost. A few months after returning to New York, Harden hosted Allen and others at the New York conference, which demonstrated his achievements. And under 2 years, Harden increased the Mott Street congregation by 18 times and organized 8 churches in 2 states. Allen stationed Harden to the New York district to oversee it all and the men leading these congregations. I have found no clues about Harden's New York activities between 1823 and 1827, though he was recorded as being Bethel Church's minister as late as 1827. Soon after that, however, the lease on the Mott Street Church building expired and the building was torn down because that area of Lower Manhattan was undergoing rapid redevelopment. And so Harden left Bethel Church in other ministers' hands and he returned to Baltimore. In Baltimore, however, Harden faced serious professional and financial troubles. He had taken out mortgages and loans against the Pearl Street and Hill Street properties to supplement his minister's pay, but he had overextended himself. Harden sold the alley side of the Pearl Street lot to a friend, in part to pay off the court-ordered debt payment, but it's unclear why that wasn't enough to satisfy the court. In addition to his brick house on Pearl Street, there was now a 2 rooms deep frame house and shop on the lot, built between the house and the street, which had been occupied by a Rachel Harden, a laundress of unknown relation. But the free man's benefit of property ownership had become a debt-laden liability. And although the sale of Harden's Pearl Street home had been delayed repeatedly, the house was sold at a sheriff's sale in March 1828. By then, the Hardens had relocated to Susan's house on Hill Street. And then came another blow. The AME Church expelled Harden in 1830, likely for losing this court case and because of his financial troubles. AME rules for expulsion reinforced the propriety expected of Black ministers. The 1817 discipline directed that members be investigated who failed in business or borrowed money they could not repay. And if he has behaved dishonestly, let him be expelled. Expulsion was a last resort for those who had violated standards of conduct, loyalty, or financial responsibility. Such propriety, especially among religious leaders, upheld moral authority within the church and the broader Black community. Harden resolved his debts through a complex land and cash transfer involving the Hill Street property in November 1830. And so the Hardens pulled up stakes and they left Baltimore. The Hardens, and Henry was now 64 and Susan was now 43 years old, moved into Philadelphia's New Market Ward, and that's what you see here, the hub of Black life in the city. They adopted a young girl named Rachel from the community. And as they had no children of their own, Rachel was likely adopted to assist them as they aged, perhaps work to bring in income into the household, as much as for her companionship. Although Harden appeared as the head of household in the 1830 and 1840 federal censuses, he did not appear on Philadelphia's 1838 Black census or in any city directories. He and Susan may have rented a room from a boarding house in the New Market Ward that served Black people. In 1831, Harden joined the African Methodist Zion Conference, which ironically, the conference was composed of his former rival churches in New York, and became elder in charge at First Colored Wesley Church. He earned $15 per quarter. The church was around the corner from Allen's Bethel Church, and in fact had separated from Allen's AME conference years earlier. Harden oversaw a period of conservative growth from 427 members in 1831 to 466 members in 1832. During his tenure, Harden oversaw one measure to prevent latecomers from entering the church after services began, and another to discourage people from congregating at the church entrance after services. Harden withdrew from Wesley Church in 1834, and he retired from pastoral service, but continued to identify himself as a clergyman. In fact, unlike many other AME clergymen, Harden never identified himself by any other occupation. Harden died on May 2nd, 1841, at 75 years old from pleurisy, a painful cumulative symptom of chronic lung disease. He was unusually old for a Black person when he died, and this is by looking at bioarchaeological information from cemeteries in Baltimore. But his cause of death was all too common and belied the close, unhealthy conditions in which urban Black people resided. His occupation, too, had brought him into regular contact with sick people, possibly a factor in his own health. Harden was buried at the Third Presbyterian Colored Church Cemetery, also known as the Third African and later Lombard Church. But the Third Cemetery, the location is not known for this place. But Susan herself was sick and she was very poor. And Susan was admitted that November to the Blockley Almshouse's incurable ward for palsy and co. The almshouse was a destination of last resort for Philadelphia's infirm and poor, because it not only meant that the private hospitals would not take them, but they had no one who could take care of them at home. Susan died at the almshouse almost 2 years later from paralysis on November 2nd, 1843. She was buried in the almshouse burying ground. Her estate was not worth more than $5, which translates to about $219 in 2026. Susan, however, believes she still had a claim to that Hill Street property in Baltimore, and she passed it, the one thing that she had, to Rachel. I haven't been able to ascertain if Susan did or did not still have a claim, although I think I understand why she thinks that she did. But it's telling that one of her last acts tied back to Baltimore. So here are the primary sites associated with Henry Harden in Baltimore. There's Mount Clair, where he lived from the time he was a boy into his 40s. He joined the Methodist Church and worshiped at the African Church on Sharp Street. His free wife began acquiring properties at the same time as Harden started a class meeting out by Gwynns Falls. She leveraged the properties to acquire a house on Pearl Street, where the Hardens lived during the development of Bethel Church as an autonomous alternative to the white Methodist Church and the Sharp Street Church. Harden registered his freedom at the courthouse, then went off this map to Philadelphia, where he was at the meeting that established the African Methodist Episcopal Church. Back in Baltimore, he became elder in charge at Bethel before being sent again off the map to New York to establish the New York AME Conference. After several years, Harden returned to Baltimore, where he lost both the Pearl Street and the Hill Street properties, and the AME Church expelled him. Harden returned to Philadelphia, becoming the elder in charge at Wesley Church before retiring there and passing away. It's a big step from James Handy and Daniel Payne's spotty mentions of Harden in their histories of the AME Church to the actual places where Harden lived, worshiped, and worked. Being able to map his places and walk between them today makes Harden feel less like an untold story and more like a common, recognizable one. The details of his life as a family man, a man of faith, a healthy and then ailing body, and a free man of property suggest universal experiences of triumph, struggle, and sadness that aren't too far off from the stories of people we know in the world today. I hope this tour has helped an unknown figure become more real for you as well. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Teresa. I appreciate your thoughtful and thorough research. It's always great to see research presented so well. If there's any questions, I don't know if there's any in the chat room. I'll ask a couple of questions straight out to get things warmed up. For Teresa, what was the most challenging part about doing research on the topic? And for Shantae, why do you think this story is still relevant?
So I think the most challenging part is that Henry Harden didn't leave a lot of information on his own. And so you really have to look at the positive information, which might be census records or manumission records, in combination with the negative evidence. So things that aren't there that you might expect to be there, and have to sort of pull together some inferences about what was going on. So it's for a Black man during this period, there's scanty evidence, but I was also surprised at how much I found.
And the reason why I think that the story is worthy of telling and the information to be out there is because Mount Clair and the people that lived at Mount Clair are a huge story for Baltimore. The enslaved people lived in Mount Clair when they were manumitted or freed. They went out into the city and they built lives in the city. I tell young people all the time that any place you go in Baltimore, there were Black hands that helped build the city. So a lot of these people came from Mount Clair. A lot of the not creativity, but the historical assets that we have through the city, such as ironworks, the B&O Railroad, many Black people that were enslaved at Mount Clair are a part of those of that creation. When Black people arrived here, they already had the skill of ironworks. Ironworks is not new. It wasn't new to this continent. It had already existed in Africa. So I think that if you like history and you like connecting all of the dots, I think that you can always start at Mount Clair. And I won't deter from the story. It's either Mount Clair or Hampton National Historic Site that tells the story of many Black Baltimoreans and how they arrived there and what they did. And this is what heritage areas do. They connect the people to the stories. And that's why I thought that Teresa's story, and also the AME Episcopal Church is a huge, were a huge thing for all people, the people of color or Black people, because they were their support systems. And so we have a number of churches that were identified. It just happens that Harden was one of the people that established the AME Episcopal Church. So that's why I felt that it was a really good story to tell. And we will always hold up Mount Clair
Yeah.
as, yeah, they're very, very different places, but we will always hold them up as a place of our ancestry.
It's terrific. I really appreciate it because I've been there. I visited Krista Green. I see she's one of the attendees here as the director of Mount Clair. She's working hard on doing more interpretive programming there. We do have a question from Susan Clark. She wants to know how long Henry Harden was at Mount Clair and what work did he do? Assume his parents were also slaves at Mount Clair.
Yeah, I think Henry Harden's parents were part of this community that was developed as a result of people who Dr. Charles Carroll and Charles Carroll, the barrister, had on these properties in their earlier years before he married. And then when he and Margaret Tillman Carroll brought her dower slaves to Baltimore County, I think it's that combined group that that holds his ancestry. And there was more to that question, and I'm sorry, you're going to have to repeat it.
Yeah, give me a second. What was the rest of the question? Oh, assume his parents were also slaves at Mount Clair.
How long were they there? Right. How long were they there and what did he do? So he was born about 1766. And then he was freed in 1816. So he was, I don't know how much he was there in his later, like leading up to 1816. But he would have worked around the mansion. Most of the people that Margaret Tillman Carroll enslaved did domestic work and gardening work. There were some fields at Mount Clair, but the evidence suggests that most of the people that she enslaved were, cooking and serving meals and butlers who welcomed people into the house. So mostly domestic labor.
Terrific. Thank you. I see Patricia Sumner has her hand up. I don't know if she can ask her question live. There you are. Let's see if we can unmute you so we can get live interaction. I requested an unmute. I have a question in the chat. Did the AME churches have to have an official white minister in charge and a so-called dollar man?
So yes. So I should say the way the Methodist Church worked is that the leaders of those churches were frequently sort of rotated through the circuits, but there was always a white minister assigned to oversee the Black churches. And this was part of why the Black Methodists wanted to separate from the white church, was because they were being told what to do, what to say, how to worship, and the white ministers that they were being assigned were not actually doing the work that they were supposed to be doing on the Black community, on behalf of the Black community.
Great. Thanks, Patricia. She put her question in the chat box. Are the Hill and Pearl Street houses still standing? Why did the white Methodist preachers initially preach to Black and white parishioners in the same space, but later require the Black parishioners to sit in a gallery?
Those are great questions. So both houses are gone. The Pearl Street house is now under, I want to say, part of the University of Maryland Medical Complex up there. And the Hill Street property has been completely redeveloped. But you can sort of trace the historical streets. So it's kind of neat to be able to walk by those houses. And I'm sorry, I'm going to have to ask again what the second question was.
Why did the white Methodist preachers initially preach to Black and white parishioners in the same space, but later require the Black parishioners to sit in the gallery?
I think it was just racism. In the 1780s, the Light Street Church, the congregation outgrew the building of the Light Street Church. And I think there's a parallel to something that happened in Philadelphia. And there, what happened is the St. George Church community, including the Black people of St. George's, worked together to fund and build, to like renovate the church. And then it was right after that that the white people of the church told Black people they needed to only worship in the gallery, that there would no longer be side to side worship. And my suspicion is that the same thing happened in Baltimore, that when the Light Street Meeting House was renovated, after that renovation, that it was because of that renovation that Black people were relegated to the gallery, and Black people did not appreciate that. And that is why they formed their own societies. But I think also looking at the Methodist Church membership at the time, that the Black membership was growing much, much faster than the white membership was. And that may have made the white Methodists uncomfortable, especially because at the time there were changes happening to the Black population, including more manumissions, more freedom, more migration, a larger population in Baltimore at all. And so I think there was just sort of an effort to put Black people in their place. And that's what happened.
Dante, you have a question?
Yeah, well, I have a statement to make. Unless is there anybody else that has a question?
There's no open questions. Yeah.
Okay. So, this is what's really important to me, is not only the history but it is definitely a way of showing our connections. We are all connected either by religion or heritage or lineage. We are all connected. And that's so important in living in these uncomfortable times that we're in. We know that racism existed. We know that enslavement existed, but we're connected. When you were telling your story, Teresa, what I was following is Philadelphia to New York, back from New York, back to Philadelphia, back to Baltimore. It shows that we have strong connections with one another, either through our religion and our faith or our families. And so we need to acknowledge that these places existed, these very sacred places existed in our heritage, not just for the sake of tourism, but that we investigate and that we become curious about where did we come from, who are we connected with. And I think that looking at that, we can be nicer to one another, and appreciate everybody's struggle, because there is struggle, whether it's then or whether it's now. And that's what's so great about sharing these stories, is that it makes the person become more curious, more some people more curious, and more willing to investigate their own family's journey. So I do appreciate it, and I am very, very grateful for you bringing this story. I'm also, since she's here, and but I can't see her, I want to thank Krista Green for all of the work that she's doing all by herself on that hill in Mount Clair to bring that story alive. And I'm hoping that through all of her hard work, that we will find more visitors that will come to Mount Clair to what do we call it? Do we call it a Mecca, or that we come there as a I forget the word for it, but anyway, that they come there and they see it, because it is also a beautiful place to
It
look
is.
out over the city and see Baltimore from a different perspective.
It has a spectacular view. You're
It
absolutely
does.
right.
It does. It has a
Beautiful site, really worth saving and interpreting, and I commend Krista as well for her it's yeoman's work that she's doing out there. There's
absolutely.
Wanda Farmer was with us. She had to leave early, but I want to get it in the recording. She asked how to learn more later. So if you would tell us, both Shante and Teresa, where we can find more information later, please let her know in the
Um,
video.
we will keep Teresa Moyer close at hand, because Teresa is a phenomenal researcher. This is not her first research. Teresa did a has done a wonderful research on Mount Clair in general. Teresa, did you publish that?
Yeah, so there's a book called Ancestors of Worthy Life, which is about the Black history of Mount Clair. I am now at a point in my research with Henry Harden where I'm starting to give presentations and also publish on this work. There's some information about Henry Harden on the Mount Clair Museum House's website. And so you can go to Krista for information about their website. And there's a little bit about him in that book, but keep an eye out, because there will be more information about this story coming out. And I'd like to just point out too that Henry Harden was really part of a community, and that his story is the story of the development of a elite Black class in Baltimore. And for example, one of the men freed from the Baltimore Iron Works by Charles Carroll of Carrollton ended up um, purchasing property, having an ironworks business in freedom, freeing his family. And he was one of the trustees of the African churches in both churches in Baltimore. And that his name was Jacob Gilliard. And so I think it's interesting that it's not just like, I feel like Henry Harden is more like my tour guide on learning about this time in Baltimore, when it can be really, really difficult to learn about Black people in Baltimore, the sort of late 18th to early 19th century. And I just think we should all kind of be grateful to him for allowing us to learn more about Baltimore in this way.
So
Thank you so much.
thank
Yeah.
you. So as we segue into learning more about Black Baltimore and the people of this time period, I would like to welcome our attendees to come back on March the 6th, same time, same bat channel, and learn about another visionary and person of great success. That is Frances Ellen Watkins Harper, who, by Teresa's math, I don't know if they were born in the same period, but I know that she definitely walked the steps that Harden did, especially when you talk about Outervine. Frances was born in the Sharp Leadenhall community, We will have a scholar that, if anybody knows her, Dr. Cheryl LaRoche, will be giving that talk. So I hope that you will tell your friends, tell your colleagues to join us on March the 6th, 12 o'clock. We'll be here and we will tell the story of another Baltimore person that showed the way. And I am very, very happy to have Teresa, Dr. And Dr. Sherrill giving us the insight and the opportunity to know more about Baltimore.
Thanks, Shantae. I'm going to close out. Thank everyone for attending the Peels online program. Don't forget to check our website at thepeel.org for information on our next program, which is tomorrow, Saturday. We have a double header, two artist talks. Starting at 12 p.m., we have Joe Giordano talking about his exhibit, a photography exhibit about Baltimore. And then we have at 2 p.m., Larice Clark talking about her exhibit at the Peel. That's at 225 Holiday Street. And as Shantae mentioned, our next BNHA lecture is on March 6th, where Dr. Cheryl LaRoche will present Frances Ella Watkins Harper, A Woman for All Seasons. If you've enjoyed this program, please join our mailing list and consider making a donation to the Baltimore National Heritage Area to support the cost of this and future lunchtime lectures. I can't think of a better way to spend my lunchtime than to getting some great research and history as I have a sandwich. You can do that on the BNHA website at explorebaltimore.org. And I want to thank everyone for joining us and send us any questions or follow up that you need. Thanks, everyone. Have a great
Thank,
day.
Thank you.
thank you. Thank you, Teresa. Thank you, John.
Thanks, Teresa. Nice to meet you.
Thank you for having me.
Come to Baltimore and see us. Come and see me sometime.
Will do. We should have lunch.
All right. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.